Welcome to day one of geography distance learning. I'm here with Mrs. Brown,
Good morning.
and we thought we would start out with some of the extremely funny puns that Mrs. Brown uh, puts up for our enjoyment every day. Take a few minutes to look at this. My favorite, I have to say, is I knew a woman who owned a taser. Man, was she stunning! But all of them are great. So take a look at them. We'll come back to the ones across the bottom in at the end of the. Oh no, that's a very good boy. Oh, funny. Those are good. I took a picture of a field of wheat. It was grainy. Once you've seen one shopping center, you've seen a mall. Oh, this is good. This isn't even remotely funny. And I'd really like to hear the reasoning behind women who won't take their husband's last name. Notice that? Because my last name is Best. Oh, these are good. We'll come back to the ones along the bottom at the end of this presentation.
So today, this is the beginning for all of us, including Mr. Anderson and I and all the rest of your teachers. We're going to talk about your class schedule and what we expect of you. We're going to talk about how we're going to go about finishing up our Africa unit and the kids that are doing the challenge groups, how they're going to finish up their web pages. And we're going to do a little introduction to Chapter 14, Section 1.1 on Africa's borders and cultures.
So first, let's talk a little bit about the class schedule and what we've set up for at least probably the next month or so. For periods 1, 2, and 4, we'll be meeting on Mondays and Wednesdays. Periods 5, 6, and 7 will be Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on Friday, all of your teachers will have office hours between the hours of 9:30 and 11:30 a.m., where you'll have a chance to email questions. We may schedule some Google Meets for small groups and assign any weekend work, something probably in the line of what might be interesting if you want to go a little bit further, a little bit deeper into some of the things we're talking about. So if you look over to the right, you'll see that from 7:30 to 9, that's when teachers will be doing prep and will post any assignments. 9 to 9:30 is when you'll be checking in with your Zephyr Time teachers for attendance and possibly Google Meets, so you can meet face-to-face online with them. 9:30 to 10 is your first period on Monday, Wednesday, fifth period on Tuesdays and Thursdays. 10:15 to 10:45 will be second period Monday and Wednesday, sixth period Tuesday and Thursday. 11 to 11:30 Monday and Wednesday will be your fourth period class, and Tuesday and Thursday will be your seventh period classes. Just a note that Mondays and Tuesdays are A days, Wednesdays and Thursdays will be B days. For your teachers, we'll have 11:30 to 12:30 for lunch, and then office hours for you to contact us from 12:30 to 2 o'clock, and teacher prep at 3:30.
So for the Africa unit, the kids that were doing the web page, you should continue working together to complete the web pages by Thursday and share them with both Mr. Anderson and myself. Here's a typo. And myself, Mrs. Brown, even if you don't have one of us for a teacher, but we both want to be able to have access to those. So one of you needs to share it with us because it's the sites, and so just one of you can do that. Those of you who are doing the regular work, what we're going to be doing this week is Chapter 14, just Section 1.1, and then we'll do just Section 2.2 this week. Next week, we'll do 2.3 and 2.4. You'll be doing some Cornell notes and some additional activities with those. You'll always go into Google Classroom to see any announcements and assignments along with this introduction for each day that we're doing for you.
And now we're going to put a few questions out for you, and you can write your thoughts or answers in a chat, and we'll be able to talk about those as a group. So going in, and this is looking at Chapter 14, Section 1.1 on borders and cultures. How are the borders between nations typically decided and created?
Not just in Africa, but anywhere.
And we also have, if you look at the chart on page 385, it's titled Cooperative International Organizations in Africa. The chart shows 5 cooperative organizations working in Africa. Take the time to read the purpose of each organization, and then think about what is one goal or purpose that is shared by most or all of those organizations on the chart. So if you look at page 384 in your textbook, and hopefully you do have them. I guess it's on 382. If you look on page 382 in your textbook, you'll see the introduction page for Chapter 14, Sub-Saharan Africa today. Once again, to remind you, we're not going to be going through this entire chapter. We're going to focus on Section 1.1, Africa's Borders and Cultures. And again, so that you can think about this week we will look also at Section 2.2, Nigeria and oil. And then next week we will look at 2.3, agriculture and food supply, and 2.4, improving public health.
So this section talks about borders and cultures in Africa, and it's a brief overview of looking at how European powers created new colonial borders, and they ignored the existing borders of the traditional African cultures. And this is really important because it affected the development, conflict, it affected wealth of countries, and cooperation of the different culture groups coming through for today. So when you're reading this, think about that and think about how borders in the United States were formed, how borders in South America were formed, and then think about how it might have been different from the other parts of Africa that you read in Chapter 13, what the goal of the Europeans was when they came into Africa.
And you may want to think back, way back to the beginning of the year when we did the Atlas introduction activity, as you recall, or may not. One of the questions was how many languages are spoken on the continent of Africa. And you may recall that there are 1,000 different languages spoken. So that would indicate that you had that many different culture groups. And when you're looking at the map with language families in sub-Saharan Africa and looking at the borders, it all really fits together. And this section talks about original borders, European borders, and some of the long-term consequences of those borders that the European nations established.
So when you're doing your reading, you're going to be going back to the Cornell Notes format. This is the format that you're going to be using. Remember to use it in this format, and neatness counts. There is a sample of this attached to the webpage, but we do not want you printing this out. It's in Google Classroom, but we don't want it printed. Just use a piece of loose leaf paper or a sheet of notebook paper. On the top, make sure you include the chapter 14, section 1.1, and then you will title it Africa's Borders and Cultures. Then you're going to put your name, first and last name, class period and date for organization, both for yourself and for Mr. Anderson and I. On the left are cues. Those are words, peoples, and places that are new and important to the section. You know how to do the notes. You read each paragraph, put it into your own words, the main topic, main idea. Summary, pretend you are explaining the section to a parent, a sibling, a classmate who didn't want to read it, and you need to give all of the important information using 2 complete sentences. That's not just taking out a comma and putting in a period, it's actually making 2 thoughtful sentences. Break it into 2. The sections in the chapter, sometimes they're broken into 2 by blue headings. You can put 1 summary sentence for that and 1 summary sentence for the other blue heading. And for the quiz questions, you're going to write at least 2 quiz questions right there. Don't just write a word, actually write it in a question format, which would mean it's a complete sentence with a question mark at the end.
So the assignment for today is first read the assigned pages, 384 to 385. Complete your Cornell notes for Chapter 14, Section 1.1, following the correct Cornell notes format. Take a photo of your completed notes and upload it to the assignment listed in Google Classroom before our next class meeting, and make sure to click Turn In. Then complete the geo activity in Google Classroom before our next class meeting.
If you have any questions, now is the time to put those into the chat.
And one last thing, we know that this is all new to all of us. It's new to you. It's new to Mrs. Brown and I. We're going to all be learning together. We are, again, we're going to try to get what we feel are the most important things for you to get out of world geography from now until the end of April, possibly the end of the school year before we get together again. So we really appreciate your patience with us, and we will certainly work together with you so that we can all make this a good period in our school year.